Now let's sit in a comfortable meditation posture and close the eyes. Bring our attention on the silence deep in the mind. We connect with that silence. Become the silence. Now established in the silent witness, listen to the reading of the Yoga Vasishta. I have told you, O handsome Ra, about the causes of the appearance and disappearance of creation, resembling the heaving and resting of the waves of the sea in the world. There is no need for a long discourse to tell you that the mind is the germ of the forest of acts. And this germ, being nipped in the beginning, prevents the growth of the tree and frustrates the doing of acts which are its fruits. The mind is all. Therefore, by healing the mind and your heart, you can cure all troubles and diseases you may incur in the world. The minds of men are always troubled with thoughts of the world and bodily actions. But these being deadened and defunct, we see neither the body nor the outer world. The negation of the outer world and the suppression of inner thoughts by practice of self-denial for a long period of time serve to curb the demon of the mind. It is possible to heal the inner disease of the internal mind by administration of this best and only medicine of negation of the external world. It is because of its thoughts that the mind is subject to errors of its birth and death. And being bound to are liberated from the body and this world. The mind, deluded by its thoughts, sees the world shining before it like a man in his delusion, sees the imaginary city of Gandharvas drawn before him in empty air. All these visible worlds exist in the mind, where they seem to exist, like the fragrance in air, consists in the cluster of flowers containing the essence. A little particle of the mind contains the world. like a small grain of sesame contains the oil, like an attribute is contained in its subject, and a property abides in a substance. The world abides in the mind in the same manner as sunbeams abide in the sun, and brightness in light and heat and fire. The mind is the reservoir of the world, as snow is the reservoir of coldness. It underlies all existence, as the sky is that of emptiness, and as velocity is inherent in wind. Therefore, the mind is the same as the world, and the world is the same as the mind, all owing to their intimate and inseparable connection with each other. The world is lost by the loss of the mind. But the mind is not lost by the destruction of the world. Chapter 5. The story of Shukra, Bhargava. Shukra falls in love with a fairy nymph. Ram said, "Tell me, sage, who knows all truths and is best acquainted with all that is past and is to come, how does the form of the world exist so vividly in the mind? Please explain to me by some illustration how this world appears as a visible object to the inner mind." Vasishtha replied, "The world truly is situated in the minds of men, just as it appeared in its firm and compact state to the 10 bodiless sons of Indu. It is situated in the same manner in the minds of men as the thought of King Lavana's transformation of himself to a tribal Chandala under the influence of sorcery. It is in the same manner as Bhargava believed he possessed all worldly gratifications, because true bliss has much more relation to the mind than to earthly possessions." Ram said, "Sage, how did the son of Brigu come to enjoy earthly pleasures when he had been longing for heavenly joy?" Vasishtha replied, "Ram, listen to my narrations of the story of Brigu and Kala, whereby you will know how he came to possess earthly enjoyments. There is a tableland of Mandara mountain that has rows of tamala trees with beautiful flowers under them. Here, sage Brigu conducted his Bhardava's tapas in olden times, and it was in this place that his high-minded and valiant son Shukra also came to perform his tapas. Shukra was as handsome as the moon, radiant with his brilliant beams. He took his seat in that happy grove of Brigu for the purpose of his tapas. Having long sat in the grove under the shade of a rock, Shukra removed himself to the flowery beds and fair plains below. He wandered freely about the bowers of Mandara pleasure garden in his youthful sport, and became revered among the wise and ignorant men of the place. He wandered there at random, like Trisanku, between the earth and sky, sometimes playing about as a boy, and at others setting in fixed meditation like his father. He remained without any anxiety in his solitude, as a king who has subdued his enemy. Then he happened to see an Apsara fairy traversing in her aerial journey. He saw her with the eyes of Hari Vishnu fixed upon his Lakshmi as the fairy skimmed over the watery plain, decorated with wreaths of Mandara flowers, her tresses waving loosely with the playful air. Her trinklets jingled with her movements, and her fragrance perfumed the winds of the air. Her fairy form was as beautiful as a vine, and her eyeballs rolled as in the state of intoxication. The moonbeams of her body shed their ambrosial dews over the landscape and bewitched the hard heart of the young devotee as he stared at the fairy form before him. She also, with her body shining like the fair moon and shaking like a wave of the sea, became enamored of Shukra as he looked at her face. Shukra then checked the impulse of his mind, which the god of love had raised after her, but losing all power over himself, he became absorbed in the thought of his beloved object. Chapter 6. Shukra imagines Indra's paradise. Vasishtha said, henceforth, Shukra, with his closed eyes, continued to think of the nymph and indulge himself in his dreams of an imaginary kingdom. He thought that the nymph was passing through the air to the paradise of Indra, the god with 1,000 eyes. He imagined he was following her closely to the happy regions of the celestial gods. He thought he saw the gods decorated with garlands of beautiful mandara blossoms on their heads, hanging resplendent as liquid gold. He seemed to see the heavenly maidens with their eyes like blue lotuses, regaling the eyes of their spectators, and others with their eyes as beautiful as those of antelopes, playing with their sweet smiles all around. He saw also the Marutas, gods of the winds, bearing the fragrance of flowers, breathing their sweet scent on one another and resembling the omnipresent Vishvarupa by their heavenly journey. He heard the sweet hum of bees, giddy with the perfume exuding from the trunk of Indra's elephant. He listened to the sweet strains of a heavenly choir. There were swans and storks gabbling in the lakes with lotuses of golden color in them. There were celestial gods lying in the tree gardens beside the holy stream of the Milky Way, Mandakini, the heavenly Ganges. These were the gods Yama and Indra, and the sun and moon, and the gods of fire and the winds. And there were regents of the worlds, whose shining bodies shaded the luster of vivid fire. On one side was Paravata, the warlike elephant of Indra, with the scratches of demonic weapons on his face, and tusks, gory with the blood of the defeated hosts of demons. Those who were transported from earth to heaven in the form of luminous stars were wandering in their aerial vehicles, blazing with golden beams of the shining sun. The gods were watched by the showers falling from the peaks of Mount Meru below, and the waves of the Ganges rolled on with scattered mandara flowers floating on them. The alleys of Indra's groves were tinged with saffron from heaps of mandara flower dust, and they were trodden by groups of Apsara ladies playing wantonly upon them. There were gentle breezes blowing among parijata plants, bright as moonbeams in the sacred bowers, and blowing fragrant honey from the cups of kunda and mandara blossoms. The pleasure garden of Indra was crowded with heavenly maidens, smeared with the frosty dust of kashara flowers, covering them like vines of the groves in their yellow robes. Here were heavenly nymphs dancing in their gaiety at the tune of their lovers' songs. There were the heavenly musicians, Narada and tambura, joining their vocal music in union with the melody of the stringed instruments, lute and lyre. Holy men and the pious and virtuous were seen to soar high in their heavenly cars, sitting there with decorations of various kinds. The amorous maidens of the gods were clinging round their god Indra, like the tender vines of the garden twine about the trees. There were galuncha fruit trees studded with clusters of their ripening fruit, resembling sapphires and rubies and set like rows of ivory teeth. After these sights, Shuka thought of making his obeisance to Indra, who was seated on his seat like another Brahma, the creator of the three worlds. Having thought so, Shukra bowed down to Indra in his own mind. As Indra was the second Brigu in heaven, that is, a second father, Indra received him with respect, and having lifted him up with his hand, made him sit by himself. Indra addressed him, saying, I am honored, Shukra, by your call. This heaven of mine is graced by your presence. May you live long to enjoy the pleasures of this place. Then Indra sat in his seat with a graceful face that shone with the light of the unspotted full moon. Shukra, sitting by Indra's side, was saluted by all the assembled gods of heaven. He continued to enjoy every joy there, having been received with paternal affection by the Lord of gods and men. Chapter 7. Shukra imagines embracing the fairy nymph. So Shukra was indulging in following the impulses of his karmic traces. While he was supposed to be meditating. Very easy to do, isn't it? If we do it, then are we balancing those karmic traces? No. Because we become embedded in the vibrations, the imaginary scenes that are appearing in the mind. This is just another form of being lost in the illusion. just another level of illusion that's being created. Now let's continue established in the silent witness. And engage the mind in Trimana Sanyama, on the esoteric Maha Mantra. This practice will balance all the karmic traces that have been enlivened and activated by the reading of the Yoga Vasishta. Jai Guru Dev.